Welcome to part 2. Here you are. Thank you so much for coming back. So here in this video, and I filmed it a different day, so it's just going to start rolling the clip. But like I said, you're going to get more tips and tricks on how to make the textbook more engaging. And if you haven't yet and want to know other methods, I did a part 1 to this video, and I'll link it somewhere on the screen or in the descriptions. I'm still trying to get used to this whole YouTube thing and not sure where things will link. But anyway, welcome. And without further ado, here is part 2 of how to make that textbook more fun for your kids. So the next method you might have heard before already is Jigsaw Text. It's basically creating the challenge of a puzzle with the text. What you do is you can photocopy passages of the textbook, whatever you guys are going to read, and just cut it up and put in an envelope, give it to different kids, different pairs, different groups, however you want to do your groupings, and they basically have to figure out, well, which order does the passage go. So it's really great because not only are they just reading the information, but they're looking at the structure and the sequencing and trying to figure out, okay, which one is probably first, middle, last. So it asks them to do a lot of problem solving and critical thinking that way. So the groupings for it can be really fun. You know, you can do it individually, or you can have them do it in partners, or what you can even do is give each student just a section of the text, and then they have to put themselves in order that way, right? So it's a really great way to engage the kids, get them to move if you wanted that also, and just be creative with the text. Another really fun method is by gamifying the textbook. There are a lot of great fun games you can use to quiz the students and help them just be more motivated when they're reading the text, when they know that there's a game coming, that you guys are going to play a game. Sometimes I like to put this in between sections. It could be like a short mini game, or if you want to do like a review game at the end of a section or at the end of a chapter or unit, whatever. And some of the simple games I've loved playing in my classroom are things like charades, trivia, Pictionary, gestures, outbursts, taboo, all of that. So yeah, part of the fun is also when you can have the kids create the game pieces. For example, staple in my classroom has been history taboo. And I actually just have a set of whiteboards and I distribute it, and the kids as groups then get to write the taboo cards. They have a target card and a list of words that are taboo, and I tell them, limit it to 3 or whatever. It just depends. You can make the adaptations for your classroom depending on where their skill levels are. And then each group switches, right? And they take turns just kind of going through it, and then we can do multiple rounds with the whiteboards because they can easily erase them and create new ones. And that's been a lot of fun. Loud, but fun and engaging, and they're always on task. Now, the biggest thing for you as a teacher when you're planning something like this is actually just the logistics, especially if you're having them create the game pieces. Yeah, so the logistics, what am I talking about? As in grouping and the points and whatever accommodations or adaptations you're going to make. Some students will find this very difficult, especially things like taboo, and a good way to avoid embarrassing them is just giving them as much warning as possible. Like, hey, this is going to happen, you know, study your vocabulary, or maybe give them a set thing that they can be in charge of if that's part of the accommodations you normally do for them. Another accommodation too that I've done in the past for some of the kids that I know have high anxiety or just struggle a little bit more is I allow them open notes for the game, whereas some of the kids maybe I don't, or maybe it's something you want to open for everyone because you just want them to have that repeated exposure to content. Now, there is something though to be said with giving them opportunities for retrieval as much as possible. That actually is a really good way to increase learning. But yeah, you want to avoid causing more anxiety for the kids or any embarrassment. So if you do have some kids like that in your classroom, try to be aware and make accommodations for them ahead of time. Be prepared and help prepare them. The next method I want to talk about is basically the comic strip. And it's a classic, it's a tried and true method, and there's a reason for that, right? It's great because sometimes having a combination of pictures and text is a much easier way for students to express their learning. And they also love showing their creativity and sharing that with other people. And I really love comic strips because they're a really great way, a quick way to assess the learning and comprehension of the students. And in addition, I think it actually engages them in really deep thinking because they're forced to summarize and condense all their learning into their own words, right? And they have to have their different characters say or give out the information in a creative way, in a different way. Oh my gosh, I'm out of words. But yeah, that's why I love the comic strip. I think it's easy, it's fun, the kids really enjoy it, and they are involved in deep thinking. I think that's the most important thing. You know, summarizing is actually a really hard task to do, especially when you're summarizing with your very own words. And the comic strip is a great way for kids. It's a great way to scaffold that that skill of summarizing. And finally, the last method I want to talk about is basically having the students rewrite the text, right? And challenging them to rewrite the text in a way that is more engaging or more humorous. Now, this can be very hard, so you can adapt it in different ways. Like maybe you can just have them, hey, how can you rewrite this title, right? Or this subtitle. And in that way, even though you're asking them to just rewrite the title or the subtitle, they would have needed a good idea of what is in that section to be able to give it a good creative title. And you can have them compete or give each other feedback that way too. So that's a simple way to do it. If you wanted to go be a little bit more involved and you have more time, it can be as involved as asking them to present the text or the information using a different medium, right? Along with different wording, etc. They can do video, they can do a rap song, poetry, they can do a news segment, they can do posters, whatever. It's just a different way of presenting the text. And the fun part of the fun is when they share, when they get to publish or create these things and they share with each other and give each other feedback. It's a great way to reinforce, repeat the information for each other, as well as for you to assess, well, how deeply did they really understand this? And then if you see that there are things that they misunderstood, you know, go back and reteach it. So those are the methods I have. And if you're interested, I do have a few more. I have written an article about it, and I will link it down below in the details section. However, now I want to talk about how you can create your own methods, and it's actually really easy. Just remember these 3 key things. First, the human brain is made to solve problems and rise to mental challenges, right? We all love puzzles. We all love games. You can use that to help you create some ways to make the textbook more engaging. The second thing to keep in mind is that humans are social creatures, and we actually learn a lot better with others. So try to make things into a friendly competition, or it can be cooperative, whatever will get your students to work together, and just putting that human factor into their learning will be really helpful. The third thing to keep in mind is that creativity actually activates the same part of your brain as memory and imagination. So really try to get kids to be creative. Not only will this be a fun thing for them, but it will deepen their learning and engage their imagination. So just give them those opportunities, right? And then finally, I do want to encourage you to diversify like the modes of your activities. Make sure you include not just reading, writing, talking, movement, as much of that as you can as possible. I think that's really going to engage your students, get their brain juices going, and help keep them more on task. And the textbook won't be so boring and dry anymore. So I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for being patient. I'm so sorry for all the ums or whatever the editing will turn out to be. This is my first video. Thank you for being patient. Okay, well, thank you. I will see you all on the next video. Have a great day.